You guys can't take the pace, obviously. Well, welcome to our third briefing of the day. I think it'll probably be our last, but it's a two-part briefing. And we're going to start with Colonel Earl Simms, who's the Army's Adjutant General, and he's going to talk about getting mail to our troops in Bosnia. And after that, we'll have the normal Pentagon briefing. Colonel Simms.
Thank you, sir. This is an unclassified information briefing on the Army postal operations in Bosnia. The purpose of this briefing is to provide an overview of the postal operations in support of Operation Joint Endeavor. The areas I will discuss will include Army postal units involved, both active and reserve, how the mail is flowing, the volume of mail, the transit time that we're experiencing so far. We'll talk a bit about proper addressing, which is critical to us, and a program that kicks off today, any service member mail. Our overall objective is to provide effective and efficient management operation for our postal network that supports a deployed force. In order to establish and support the theater of operation, the Commander-in-Chief European Command is in charge with overall responsibility for postal operations. First Personnel Command has been designated by the SINC as his responsible agent for planning, coordinating, executing the postal plan. Their plan establishes two composite active duty postal companies to be used in theater. The 1st to the 15th and the 510th AG Company. Those two organizations are coming out of Europe. The initial elements of those two organizations have already deployed. Of the 100 or so soldiers that are associated with those two organizations, 51 are already deployed and on the ground and operational. The remaining 49 are scheduled to move in increments. We anticipate they will be fully closed in the theater on about the first week of February. They will be located, or elements of them will be located throughout the theater in Croatia, Hungary, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. Not only will they be involved with, once they are fully deployed, the handling of the mail, they will also be providing finance services. Now, that is the money order and stamp business, very similar to the postal operations that you have here in CONUS and USPS. To ensure that the postal services for the family and soldier members remaining in Europe continues uninterrupted, 3 reserve postal units based in CONUS were mobilized and deployed to backfill the units that are moving to the theater. Those units include the 23rd AG Company from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the 329th from St. Paul, the 329th is from Pittsburgh, the 23rd, the 755th is from St. Paul, Minnesota, and I've got that all confused here. 329th, St. Paul, Minnesota, 755th from Texarkana, Texas. They have already arrived in theater and have begun operations. The last elements of those units closed on the 15th of January. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the flow to give you an idea of how the mail is flowing. Mail generated out of the United States comes through the United States Postal Service system. That moves out through, for letter mail, through the New York Gateway into Frankfurt. When that is the mail hub here in Frankfurt. That mail is then broken down and moves to each of the 2 locations downrange. Tuzla, Bosnia-Herzegovina, and then Tezar in Hungary. From there, the mail is further broken out to units and subsequently to the soldiers. Next slide. I might mention that the United States Postal Service has provided superb support. As you know, the mail portion of this operation began just about at the height of the mail season, in that we began flowing mail into the theater on or about the 19th of December. So they have done a magnificent job of getting the mail moved. This will show which accumulated, the cumulative total is 25,000 pounds. In January so far, you can see that that has increased dramatically, up to 11,000 pounds daily, with a total out to 84,000 pounds, almost of a quarter of a million pounds of mail so far. This slide depicts the transit time that we are experiencing. This shows 8 to 10 days, and that means from any town USA to the time it reaches the soldier's hand. Recognize that's the average time that we are measuring. We're experiencing about 2 to 4 days from Europe down to Hungary and to Bosnia as we speak. The reverse in terms of mail coming out of the theater matches the times that we have going in. Next slide. This is probably one of the very, very important areas if you talk to anyone associated with mail, and that is what we call mail hygiene, and that is appropriate address. What we have at the bottom is a sample address. The variables, service member's name, organization, and APO. The only thing that remains constant, of course, is the title of the organization or the operation. The locations associated with each of the APOs. Those locations are area-based. There are some restrictions on mail going into the theater. There are no rare or precious metals allowed, firearms, alcoholic beverages, obscene material. At present, there are no restrictions on weight, up to 70 pounds, which is the standard for first class. However, as we are encouraging with any service member mail, that we limit that to at least shoebox size for now as we continue to deploy our organization into the theater. Okay. Today marks the effective day for any service, any family member mail. This program became popular during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and is designed for the public to send and mail packages to unspecified service members or their families who are deployed. Mail may be sent from any post office to the addresses that you see listed here. Since the theater is continuing to develop, again, I would like to emphasize that we would initially like to emphasize that mail no larger than shoebox size be sent. We feel by February timeframe we will be able to accept unlimited. This just enhances our ability to ensure that mail is throughput. The other reminder is that this still does take 32 cents. Sending a letter into the theater, 32 cents would be what it would take. During the month of February, a special program called No Greater Love, a nonprofit humanitarian organization here in Washington, D.C., has established a special address that has encouraged school children to send Valentine's Day cards. That will run in the month of February only. We have a toll-free hotline which is available to assist mailers in verifying zip codes in support of Operation Joint Endeavor and any restrictions that apply. The number is, I believe it's in your handout, but if not, I'll pass it to you, 1-800-810-6098. And that will lead you to the Military Postal Agency. Individuals there will be available from 8 through 4, Monday through Friday, to answer questions. Our objective is to ensure that the deployed force are provided the best possible postal services. You can assist us in getting the information out with regard to correct addressing. If that is possible, then you will do us a great service in ensuring that mail is efficiently getting into the theater. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes my briefing. What are your questions? Sir.
You spoke in terms of pounds. Can you convert that to pieces?
Pounds is, I think, about as much as I can get to right now. I don't know that we are equating that because as we look at moving the mail, we don't look at the pieces as much as we do the tonnage that goes on the aircraft and or ships.
In your past experience, though, you should be able to say what a pound of mail is worth in
Yes, sir.
units.
There's a 80-20 split. 80% is normally parcel weight, and 20% of that is usually letters.
So that would vary, obviously, if it's all letters. Yes, sir.
Why not rare and precious metals? What's wrong with sending somebody a bracelet or a ring or something?
Say again, sir.
Why not rare and precious metals? What's wrong with sending somebody a bracelet or a ring?
Those restrictions are placed. There are two ways that they're placed. In this instance, it can be placed by the country in which we are going into, and or the Postal Service itself.
And who's doing this?
This is a country restriction, as we understand.
You know why?
No, sir, we do not.
In the past, haven't some of these any service member mails enjoyed just a little too much popularity, and haven't they overburdened the system at times?
They certainly increase the volume of mail that we have going into the theater. We like to encourage it because, as most of you know, getting a letter, and when someone doesn't write to you every day, and the means by which we are able to distribute this makes it a positive thing in that everybody gets something every day. It does increase our workload and volume, but we feel comfortable that we'll be able to handle that. I did not mention in my brief, but we have not experienced dramatic backlogs, and in anticipation of getting all of our forces in on the ground, we believe that we will be able to handle this satisfactorily. Yes, sir.
This will sound funny, but it's a serious question. Do you all have a motto like neither rain, no snow, no hail, no sleet, like the U.S. Postal Service used to have?
No, sir, not necessarily a motto, but we believe that if we can get it there as quickly as possible, we're going to make the soldier happy. But that's not necessarily a motto.
Is the... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
You've got a lot of forces moving into position, people in transit. How much of a problem is it now to get mail to those folks because you don't know where they are from day to day?
That is a challenge. And we have systems, automated systems, that are assisting us in terms of the locator process. But until we get the full theater deployed and all of our assets in place, will we have a complete handle on that. But it presents a challenge. As I talk to the theater, they indicate that it's a challenge, but we've been able to get that done.
So, and the 8 to 10 day timetable that you laid out is something you're meeting now, not something you...
That's what we are meeting now. What we laid out here is what we are meeting right now with the load that you've seen.
How is the any service member mail distributed? Is it just purely at random, or is there any attempt to send it to people who aren't getting mail or something?
It is an equitable distribution or break, and just as I indicated, we will get and we will split. Say we get 5,000 pounds in Frankfurt, and we will put 5,000 pounds on one bird or the other, depending on what the population is on the other end. And then we attempt to equitably distribute that on the ground. And certainly, as they break it on the ground, they attempt to distribute that to folks who haven't received any mail that day. That's the real purpose, and we found that to be quite a benefit with regard to morale.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much. I regret to tell you that a soldier in Hungary died last night, becoming the first fatality in the Bosnian operation. It was a non-combat fatality. He died of an apparent heart attack, although we're still looking into the details. His name, Sergeant Clement E. Southall, Jr., 39 years old, was in the 190. It was assigned to the 191st Ordnance Battalion in Tazar, Hungary. S-O-U-T-H-A-L-L. He was a wheeled vehicle operator with the 23rd Ordnance Company in Miesau, Germany. M-I-E-S-A-U.
Yeah, or the U.S.
I don't know.
The Army will put out a press release.
The Army has further details on that.
We'll put out a press release later today.
What were the circumstances? He died in his sleep?
The circumstances were that he began to experience nausea and breathing difficulties at about 11:30 p.m. Life support teams were sent to his quarters, and he died shortly after midnight this morning.
Did you give us his age?
39 years old.
And this, again, this is Tizar?
Yes. And with that, I'll take your questions.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you plan anything for tomorrow? The Secretary said that he was going to wait to make comments on the 19th, on the deadline on the 19th, until the briefing. NATO holds a briefing on Saturday. Do you all plan anything here tomorrow on the deadline?
We're not planning anything on compliance here. There'll be a series of briefings. We believe that General Walker will make a statement on Saturday in Sarajevo at about noon our time Saturday, and it's likely not to be a very detailed statement because we need to, the I-4 needs to brief the North Atlantic Council and NATO on the state of compliance, and that won't happen for maybe until early next week. We hope also to have a briefing for you from the theater early next week on the state of compliance by whiz-bang technology. So you will be adequately briefed on that, but it will take us a while. It'll take I-4 a while to assess the degree of compliance. Jamie.
Ken, we were briefed this morning by a couple of senior officials about the intelligence support for the operation. Could you just comment about how critical intelligence is to the success of this mission? How important is it?
Well, intelligence is critical to the success of every military mission, and particularly this one in Bosnia. Secretary Perry and the Director of Central Intelligence, John Deutsch, have put a high premium on reducing the amount of time it takes to get intelligence from the collectors and the analysts into the hands of the soldiers and the pilots and the sailors who actually have to use the intelligence on a day-to-day basis. And we are perfecting our ability to reduce the so-called sensor-to-shooter time in all our operations. We think we've achieved a much shorter connection time in Bosnia than we have in any other operation. You were briefed on a number of those details this morning, and it's very important. The quick provision of intelligence is very important for several reasons. One, of course, is protecting the safety of our own troops, alerting them to threats. Two is helping them to direct their own operations as efficiently and quickly as possible. And third is to help monitor compliance with the Dayton Accords. Mark.
Is the U.S.-China Defense Conversion Program a way that sensitive technological communications equipment is being funneled into China? And is there a split in this building on the types of equipment that should go to China?
Well, this is a complex question. Let me answer it. I think you're probably referring to a series of articles that have run recently in the Far Eastern Economic Review. Let me start off by saying that those articles which have attempted to make a link between the U.S.-China Joint Defense Conversion Commission and the sale of telecommunications technology to China, those articles are filled with errors. And the most fundamental error made in those articles is to link the U.S.-China Joint Defense Conversion Commission with the sale of telecommunications equipment to China. Telecommunications is not one of the issues that's been considered by this commission. So with that introduction, let me walk back and talk a little bit about defense conversion and then a little bit about telecommunications equipment sales to China. The U.S.-China Joint Defense Conversion Commission was set up in 1994, and it had its first and only meeting in Beijing not Guangqing, as reported in the Far Eastern Economic Review. It had its first and only meeting in Beijing on October 17, 1994. At that meeting, they discussed basically two specific projects. One was a way to demilitarize and improve China's air traffic control system. This is a project that is very similar to what we're undertaking in former Warsaw Pact countries in Eastern Europe under the Regional Airspace Initiative, where we're taking an air traffic control systems that used to be entirely controlled by the military and sort of switching them over to a more Western-style civilian management. The reason for doing this in China is very clear. It's the fastest growing air traffic market in the world. It has inadequate capacity for managing all the flights that are now taking place there and will take place in the future. For both reasons of safety and reasons of convenience, the system has to be improved, and it has to be, we believe, run in a more Western style, and that is a civilian operation. So that's the first initiative, and we've had FAA people over there talking with Chinese officials. The second initiative is the electric car initiative. The Chinese are interested in developing vehicles that are less polluting than their current fleet of vehicles. If you've been to Beijing, you've seen it's just filled with thousands upon thousands of these little yellow cabs and other gas-fueled vehicles. So they would like to develop electric vehicles, and they have asked us to help them on that. There are a number of other issues that have come up, but they really have to do with the trading of lists of projects in China that are good defense conversion candidates. And by defense conversion, what we're talking about is projects that do not involve any transfer of technology to the Chinese military, but they involve ways ultimately to transform companies that make goods primarily for the military into civilian production for the broader Chinese economy. So those are the only two projects that have been discussed explicitly: air traffic control and electric vehicles. The Joint Defense Conversion Commission has never discussed telecommunications. It's not on its agenda. So it's had nothing to do with the telecommunications project in Guangzhou, China, that's been written about by the Far Eastern Economic Review. Now, to address the other part of your question, is technology being transferred to China that will bolster its military capability? The answer is no. There is a small demonstration project that's been built connecting rooms in 4 hotels in Guangzhou, China, to demonstrate a new digital business communication system that can transmit data, voice, video, etc., just like modern communication systems in the United States. This system has been described erroneously as a state-of-the-art system. It operates at less than a quarter of the speed of systems that are working now between, say, Washington and New York. It's also very similar to systems that are being installed in cities all over the world: Jakarta, Moscow, New Delhi, including cities in Europe and the United States, Rio de Janeiro, cities throughout South America. So what we're talking about is a demonstration project to show how the newest type of communications technology works in China. This is the type of communications technology that's being installed wherever anybody is installing a phone system today. If you were to buy a TV today, you would probably buy a color TV rather than a black and white TV. If you were to buy a bicycle today, you'd probably buy a 15-speed bicycle rather than a 3-speed bicycle. Well, this is the 15-speed bicycle or the 21-speed bicycle of the communication system, not the 3-speed copper wire type bicycles of the past. So to answer your question, 1, defense conversion, not involved. 2, we are not transferring sensitive technology to China that's not available. This is technology that's generally available, made by companies all around the world, and it's just in one small demonstration project in Guangzhou.
Did Perry use his influence in order to get
Absolutely
some of this?
not. That's another fundamental error of the articles. I'd be glad to run through. I mean, these articles are unbelievable. They refer to a lieutenant colonel as a lieutenant general. They say that Secretary Perry was the first U.S. Defense Secretary to go to China when he was the third. They said, as I mentioned already, that the meeting took place in Guangzhou. It took place in Beijing. At the time that this project first came up in 1993, export licenses were required for various types of exports to China and a number of other countries. The export control laws were changed at the end of 1993 and the early part of 1994 to exempt a number of computers and telecommunications types of equipment from export licensing if they're used for civilian use. Whatever was shipped to China, and it's AT&T equipment that's readily available elsewhere, was shipped without an export license because none was required. And there was absolutely no effort made by Secretary Perry or anybody else in this building to clear the way for the shipment of this equipment. It was a completely above-board, highly transparent, highly visible transaction that was very much in line with the export control regulations of the time.
Other than that, it was a pretty good series of articles.
Important because there frequently are misconceptions about technology transfer, but what we're talking about here is off-the-shelf technology that you can buy from Siemens, you can buy from Alcatel, you can buy from Northern Telecom, you can buy from AT&T, and as I said, these systems are being installed all over the place. Almost all are being installed by private public partnerships, as this one was in Guangzhou, China.
Ken, is there a split in the administration over appraisals of the Russians' handling of Chechnya? The Secretary's comments yesterday were interpreted as being somewhat more sympathetic than others. What is the Defense Department's view of the way the Russians are handling Chechnya?
Well, I don't see how you can use the word sympathetic to what the Secretary said. The Secretary and the entire U.S. government, in fact, people of good sense and good faith all over the world, are opposed to hostage-taking, and the Secretary is very much opposed to hostage-taking. And what he said was that when hostages are taken, a strong response is justified. He's not in favor of excessive responses, and he made that very clear. But he said a strong response was appropriate, and he believes that very strongly. It happens to be the role of the United States government that we don't negotiate with hostage takers. We respond quickly and sharply to hostage takers. Yes, Bill.
Thank you, Ken. Does the Secretary or this department feel that these events, these escalations of terror and such between Chechnya and Russia threaten to destabilize Russia herself politically, or could?
Well, the Secretary said very clearly yesterday that democracy in Russia has endured many challenges, and we expect it to endure this challenge. This is an internal problem that Russia's struggling to deal with as best it can.
Secretary Perry yesterday also expressed, I guess, some mild concern about the rate that the foreign forces in Bosnia were leaving, and the hitches in some of the prisoner exchanges and other things of compliance are supposed to be done by the deadline tomorrow. Is there any more progress to report on any of those fronts today?
Well, first of all, the deadline for prisoner exchanges is not until tomorrow, and we are hopeful that the deadline will be met on all sides. the Bosnian Muslims have raised some concerns, and we understand those concerns, but the fact is that the deadlines in the Dayton Agreement aren't subject to conditions. It's pretty clear what's supposed to happen there, and Mr. Holbrook is in the area today talking about these various issues with the parties, and we're hopeful and, in fact, expectant that the deadlines will be met.
Can you report anything at this time about the zone of separation part of the Dayton Accords? Is it going? Let me ask you this in this way: is there anything impeding this withdrawal and the infilling of the I-4 troops? Such as is now impeding the prisoner exchanges, or is this going smoothly?
All our evidence is that the sides are separating. They have been separating for several days, in some cases even longer than that. We are quite confident that the zones of separations will be honored. Now, we may run into a situation here or a situation there where the forces aren't totally separated as of the deadline, which is midnight tomorrow, at the end of tomorrow. We do not anticipate, we anticipate general compliance, overwhelming compliance, and we would expect all of these problems to be worked out.
Has I-4 reconnoitered all of the zone of separation in Bosnia now, and are the boundaries delineated? And
I believe that's the case. That's basically what's been going on for the last couple of weeks, as the forces have been getting established, and we've been putting out marking out our patrol areas and checkpoints and others, and the other members of I-4 have been doing the same thing.
Thank you. I want to clarify. I just want to make sure you're saying that you don't actually expect 100% compliance by the deadline, but substantial.
We basically expect what I meant to say was we do expect 100% compliance, and we see every sign that the parties are going to comply. Can I assure you with 100% certainty that there won't be some little corner or zig or zag along the zone of separation where the two sides will each have pulled back 2.5 kilometers? No, right now I can't assure you that everybody will have done that by midnight. I expect that if they have not, it will be done shortly thereafter when we have a chance to monitor the disposition of the forces. But basically, the important thing to focus on is that the forces have been already moving out of the zone of separation, already reestablishing themselves on either side, and that's very encouraging because it drives home what we've been seeing from the beginning of this agreement, that the parties want peace and that they're willing to comply with the provisions of the Dayton Agreement.
Could I ask one more on the subject of the attaché in China, Mr. Gerdes? Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, in China at the time remarked, quote, "Our attaché inadvertently entered a Chinese restricted area and got caught." Was he indeed in a restricted area inadvertently?
Senator Feinstein's statement is accurate.
It is accurate? So we were in error, is that correct?
I just want to say that Senator Feinstein's statement was accurate. Whatever happened does not justify the way that the attaché was treated by the Chinese in violation of the Vienna Convention. We protested that, but her description of what happened is accurate.
The last time this happened, Kenneth, I remember the guys were riding on bicycles when it was stopped.
We're getting more advanced technologically. This guy was in a taxi.
Let me ask you, what were the details when these guys were arrested? What were they in a car a mile from a base, or what? There have been few details released on their arrest.
I don't think I want to go beyond the details that have been released by Senator Feinstein and others.
All right, thank you.
Set up by the cat.
Will these speed bicycles?
Can you rule out those bicycles?